Your face is the most familiar thing in the world to you. You've seen it every day of your life. You know it better than anyone. Except you don't. For roughly 2% of the population, faces don't work the way they do for everyone else. Not strangers' faces. Not their families' faces. Not their own face in the mirror. And most of them have no idea anything is wrong. They just think everyone finds faces this hard. There is a part of your brain called the fusiform face area. It sits in the temporal lobe, roughly behind your right ear, and it does one thing. It recognizes faces. Not objects. Not words. Not sounds. Faces specifically. When you look at a person's face, this region fires. It processes the distance between the eyes, the width of the jaw, the exact curve of the nose. And it compares all of that against thousands of stored templates in under a second. You don't feel it happening. It just happens. The way breathing happens. And when it works so well that you can recognize a friend across a crowded street in the rain. You can identify a face you haven't seen in 20 years from a single photograph. You can tell from a glance that two images show the same person even when the lighting and angle are completely different. Your brain does all of that automatically. Without effort. Without thought. Now imagine that part of the brain simply doesn't work. The condition is called prosopagnosia. From the Greek, prosopon, meaning face, and agnosia, meaning not knowing, face blindness. And it exists on a spectrum. At the mild end, a person might struggle to recognize acquaintances or celebrities. At the severe end, they cannot recognize their spouse, their children, their own reflection. The neurologist Oliver Sacks had it. One of the most respected brain scientists of the 20th century. The man who wrote The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat. Spent decades unable to recognize faces, including his own. He would pass himself in a mirror and think there was someone else in the room. He once apologized to his own reflection for being in the way. He wrote about it with the same clinical precision he used to describe his patients. He noted that he had developed an entire parallel system for navigating the world. He recognized people by their voice, their gait, their hair color, the way they held their shoulders. He memorized context. This person is always at this coffee shop at this time. Therefore this must be them. He built a map of the world made entirely of everything except faces. And he was not alone. He was just famous enough that people listened when he talked about it. For most people with prosopagnosia, the journey to understanding what was different about them took decades. A woman named Sarah, not her real name, given to protect her privacy, spent her entire childhood being told she was rude. She would walk past classmates in the hallway and not acknowledge them. She would fail to recognize teachers outside of the classroom. She would watch movies and lose track of which character was which. Confused by scenes that everyone else found perfectly clear. She thought she was just bad with people. Socially careless. Maybe a little stupid. She was 31 years old before she read an article about face blindness and sat very still for a long time. Because she recognized everything in it. Every single detail. She had never been rude. She had never been careless. Her brain had simply never been able to do the thing everyone else's brain was doing automatically. And for 31 years. Nobody had told her that was even possible. Here is what makes prosopagnosia genuinely strange. The brain can still see faces perfectly. The eyes work. The visual cortex works. A person with severe face blindness can describe a face in extraordinary detail. The shape of the nose. The spacing of the eyes. The exact curl of the lip. They can draw faces. They can even find faces beautiful. They just cannot store them. Or more precisely, their brain does not convert the visual input into the kind of recognizable pattern that triggers identification. The information arrives and then goes nowhere. Like a key that fits the lock but doesn't turn. And this creates a specific kind of cognitive load that most people never experience. Every social interaction requires active detective work. You scan for clues, hairstyle, height, glasses, a distinctive walk, the sound of a voice before you've even seen the face. You build a mental profile for every person you know that contains everything about them except the thing that is supposed to be the most identifying feature. One person described it as navigating a city where all the buildings look identical. You learn the route, you count the turns, you note the tree on the corner, you get where you're going, but you're always working. There is no moment where the city just makes sense on its own. Now here is the part that science finds difficult to explain. Most people with prosopagnosia are not born with it. Some develop it after a stroke, a brain injury, or a neurological event that damages the fusiform face area. These acquired cases are rare and dramatic. A person who recognized faces perfectly their entire life wakes up one morning and the ability is simply gone. Faces have become meaningless arrangements of features. They know intellectually that the person standing in front of them is their husband. The information is there. But the recognition, the feeling of knowing, is absent. Neurologists studying these cases found something unexpected. When they showed patients photographs of famous faces, the patients showed no conscious recognition at all, but their skin conductance response, a measure of subtle physical arousal, elevated slightly for familiar faces. The body knew. The body still registered something. It was only the conscious mind that had lost access to it. The recognition was still happening somewhere, just not anywhere the person could reach. But the majority of prosopagnosics, somewhere between 2 and 2.5% of the population, were born this way. They have never known anything different. Their world has always been one where faces are the least reliable way to identify a person. And the research on this group revealed something that reframes the entire condition. For a long time, prosopagnosia was considered a rare and exotic disorder. Something that happened to a handful of unfortunate people after catastrophic brain injuries. The developmental form, the kind you're born with, was thought to be even rarer. Then researchers started asking different questions. Instead of waiting for people to come to clinics reporting that they couldn't recognize faces, they went out and tested general populations. They gave large groups of people standardized face recognition tasks and looked at the distribution of scores. What they found was that face recognition ability isn't binary. It isn't a switch that's either on or off. It's a spectrum. And at one end of that spectrum, the low end, there are far more people than anyone had suspected. People who function, who hold jobs, who maintain relationships, who have developed workarounds so thoroughly integrated into their daily lives that they've never had cause to question them. They thought everyone was doing what they were doing. They didn't know there was another way. Think about what that means. There are people reading this right now who have spent their entire lives assuming that faces are just hard. That everyone struggles to recognize acquaintances in unexpected contexts. That following a movie with a large cast is universally difficult. That forgetting a face immediately after seeing it is something everyone does. They are not broken. They are not careless or rude or socially inept. They are operating a navigation system that was built without one of the primary instruments. And they have been compensating so successfully that neither they nor anyone around them ever noticed. The condition isn't always a disability. It's often just a different way of knowing people. A way that relies on voice and movement and context rather than the specific arrangement of features on a face. Some researchers have started using the term face difference rather than face blindness to describe the milder end of the spectrum. Because the word blindness implies an absence. And what prosopagnosia actually involves is a rerouting. The information takes a different path. Oliver Sacks wrote near the end of his life that face blindness had given him an unexpected gift. Because he could not rely on faces, he had learned to pay attention to everything else. The way a person moved, the particular rhythm of their speech, the topics they returned to again and again, the small habits that made someone themselves rather than just their face. He argued that faces are in some ways the laziest form of recognition, the brain's shortcut, and losing that shortcut had forced him to know people more slowly, more fully, in a way that faces alone would never have required. That's a generous reading of a condition that causes real difficulty for a lot of people. The social cost of prosopagnosia is not small. Missed connections, misread situations, the chronic low-level anxiety of not knowing if the person walking toward you is a close friend or a complete stranger. But it raises a genuine question about what recognition actually is. Whether knowing someone's face is the same as knowing someone. Whether the brain's fastest route is always the best one. Right now, you will walk past faces today, hundreds of them. Your brain will process each one in milliseconds, sorting familiar from unfamiliar, safe from unsafe, known from unknown. You will do this without thinking about it, without effort, without any awareness that something remarkable is happening behind your eyes. For roughly 1 in 50 of the people around you, none of that is happening. They are reading the room the same way a blind person reads a city, with different instruments, slower, more deliberately, with more attention paid to the things everyone else takes for granted. And here's what stays with you. They have known every person they love without ever really seeing their face. They have built friendships and marriages and careers and entire lives on the voices and walks and habits of other people. Without the shortcut, without the thing your brain does automatically, effortlessly, in less than a second. It makes you wonder what else you're taking for granted, what other instruments you're using without knowing. What parts of the world you're navigating on autopilot? Never stopping to ask how you actually know what you think you know. Your brain built a map of every face you've ever loved. You never had to ask it to. It just happened. Not everyone got that. And most of them built the same map anyway, just by a longer road.